Body and Soul. This is a fun talent. If you PvP as holy, well, first of all, good luck, but secondly, it's a pretty useful talent there. It's not the kind of thing you would normally take for PvE, because you'll say to yourself, well, why would I take that? I need something that improves my healing. We want you to be able to take things like this in PvE. They may be more situational, but they're fun. Lightning Overloads, it's a pretty cool talent. Things that proc damage or affect different spells in different ways, we think those are cool. That's not the kind of passive talents we want to prune. We just want to get rid of the things that are like, your fire damage is now 5% higher. And then Juggernaut is a great talent. You might notice on Body and Soul and Juggernaut specifically here that we went ahead and took the passive things out of here. So the Mortal Strike bonus in Juggernaut isn't there anymore, because the charge should be interesting enough on its own, even for PvE. So if you spend talent points in a tree, you'll get 3 types of passive bonuses. The first one is the one that just makes you do your job better. So it'll either be damage, healing, or tanking, depending on the tree, except for Death Knights. We have no idea what the hell we're going to do for that. The second passive bonus will be something that feels very much like a stat. You can kind of imagine where these will plug in already. Some trees care a lot about crit. Other trees might care a lot about haste. And then the third bonus is something that's going to be very unique for your spec. So there's going to be 30 of these, one for each tree. And I'll give you an example of how this will work out. And then the new stat that we put on gear, the Mastery stat, will modify this third one. So when you look at a piece of gear, it might say, oh, increases my poison damage, while a Balanced Druid might look at the same piece of gear and it'll increase a different stat for them. And then if you use dual spec or respec, the Mastery you have will go ahead and switch to modify what you do better. So this is what we want to do with the talent UI for Cataclysm. We want to be able to show it 3 panes, no scrolling. And then you can see the passive bonuses you get for spending points in each tree. You can imagine as you spend an extra point in Assassination, those 3 numbers on the bottom there, melee damage, melee crit, and poison damage would all go up. Then you can see that in the combat tree, melee damage still goes up because you're a rogue, you need to do more melee damage, but then something else might change. In this case, armor penetration. And then subtlety would be different. So there might be diminishing returns so that you don't want to keep piling all of your points into one tree, like you don't want to go 61 into combat or something, but there's also benefits to going sideways into different trees, and you don't have to worry about the specific talent that you get so much as just spending points in that tree. We also put armor penetration as green for the combat tree. This is because this character has Mastery stat on their gear, and it's improving their armor penetration even more. So, like we normally show stats that are affected by gear show up as green, in this case the character has most of their points spent in combat, so that's the Mastery stat's going to go. Got all that? Here's some example of passive bonuses. We haven't worked all these out, and this is the kind of thing that's going to take a ton of iteration. But for example, Assassination Mastery might passively improve all of your poison damage. Subtlety might lower energy costs for your attacks. Beastmaster might improve pet damage, and Marksman might improve focus regen, because of course, hunters no longer care about mana. And then I mentioned the Mastery stat already. It's a new tertiary stat that'll appear on your gear. Often you'll be trading off crit versus haste or mastery, because we're not going to put armor penetration on gear anymore. We think it's really, even though these all can still be a little mathy and affect your damage or healing or whatever in different ways, it's a little more intuitive to look at it to know, oh, if my crit goes up by 1%, I kind of know what that means based on my class and the talents that modify that. And the same thing would be true of haste. And then for mastery, you could say, hey, I'm a ret paladin, I know mastery is going to improve. Well, I'll show you in a second. It always picks the tree with the most points. We're not sure yet what will happen if you manage to spend an equal number of points in each tree. That's pretty rare. And for example, 51 points in Assassination would improve your poison damage. All right, here is a Ret Pally example. And you can see here that because Mr. To the Ground here has spent 58 points in Ret, it gets melee damage, melee crit, and then ability cooldowns would be the one affected by the mastery stat. And you can see over on the character sheet with the tooltip, you'll always know what is exactly affected. You're not going to have to guess too much if you change specs a lot. Everyone will look at mastery. It works very similar. If you're familiar with the way feral druids, when they look at a weapon, it'll tell them their feral attack power conversion from that weapon, even though other players may not see it. So it'll be kind of similar there. All right, last part of the talk. So, we have this new feature called Paths of the Titans, and what we want to do with this feature is reward character progression at max level. What happens is you get Wrath of the Lich King, you're jamming out your levels, you know, you get 10 levels to go, it's really, really fun, you're like constantly improving, new abilities, new ranks, new talent points, then you hit 80, and it really slows down. And, you know, you'll get loot, whether you raid or PvP, you'll slowly improve your loot over time, but basically that really fun period of leveling up has kind of come to a stop. And one way to do that is just keep making more and more levels. Hey, maybe Cataclysm gives you 15 or 20 new character levels. That would give us a headache. So instead we wanted to come up with a system that rewards progression at max level without having to necessarily go into more talent points, more abilities. So, the main reward for the paths is to unlock a new type of glyph called an ancient glyph. Now, these glyphs work a little differently than the glyphs you're used to from your class glyphs. We're really happy with what Inscription has done, and we think the glyphs have added some depth to the game, but we also think the feature's not 100% there. We've always thought it had a little more potential we could milk out of it, and so we're kind of uniting that with the path system here. They're themed for the Titans. And they're not at all part of the Inscription profession. So Inscription will continue to make your class-specific major and minor glyphs. Ancient glyphs is from an entirely new mechanic here. And one of the exciting things about the paths is they're not class-specific. There's not a rogue path to follow. You guys can debate as long as you want about what's the best path for rogues, and we're all cool with that. But one of the exciting parts is that you can mix and match the specific path you choose to follow with the talent trees you already have. So the Cataclysm is a time of great upheaval, right? I mean, zones are changing, what everyone thought they knew about the world is kind of eroding, and so in this time of turmoil, people are turning to like new sources of power, and one of the things that we've learned from Old War is we've learned a little more about the existence of the Titans, and so these cults have sprung up throughout Azeroth, and they'll probably particularly be focused in the new zones, places like the Twilight Highlands. You can choose to align yourself with one of these cults, and in return, you can progress down a path. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then as you progress down the path, you're getting these new ancient glyph sockets. And ultimately, you get new ancient glyphs to put in the sockets. So one of the cool points about this is you earn these ancient glyphs through archaeology. So as you're leveling up, archaeology is giving you cool things, perhaps new items, new vanity pets. You can trade some stuff in for gold and things like that. But then once you hit level 85, you can start using archaeology to trade into these cults, and in return, they'll give you the glyphs that you'll use. Which I just said. And one of the cool things is, kind of like with your class glyphs, you have choices. Even though you pick a particular path, you still have choices of what glyph you want to put in that slot. So if you're a healer, maybe you want a healing glyph. Maybe there isn't always a healing glyph at every point along the path, though. And of course, you can respec. You're not locked into any of these decisions. You have to unlock them originally, but once you do, you can tie it to dual spec or whatever you want. So these are 6 of the known Titans of Azeroth, and 6 of the paths that we might introduce when Cataclysm goes live. You're probably familiar with several of these names. Ooh, shiny.